What's up everyone, VenomousStare. I'm back with a Venomous Classic, a retro StarCraft 2 game that I dub extremely entertaining and worth recasting. So we have Vibe versus IdrA. Now if you don't know either of these players, first of all I'm shocked if you don't know Vibe and you follow this channel because I cast a ton of his games, but he's in the bottom left here of Cloud Kingdom, currently down 1-0 in a best of 3. These matches were played in StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty, the vanilla StarCraft 2, and they took place in mid-2012, and they were part of BWC America. In Game 1, we saw both players go hatchery first and go into Roach Infester Hydra macro. This is IdrA's preferred style and the style that he looks to play and has the most success with. But this game, we can see both players are going for an early pool. Now, if you just picked up StarCraft 2 and Legacy of the Void, you might be a little bit perplexed. You see that the supplies are in the 10 region. That is because in StarCraft 2 you originally started with 6 workers. This meant that early game aggression and early pools were not only more common, but something you always had to be wary of. The way that the metagame worked in Wings of Liberty and Heart of the Swarm was you basically chose 3 different builds in early game ZVZ. You chose 10 pool, 15 pool, or 15 hatch. Now this is one of those combat triangles, kind of like range, melee, and magic from RuneScape, where each one of them counters the other. So hatchery first is good against 15 pool, so 15 hatch is good against 15 pool. That's because the early game advantage of the income of the hatchery gives you more income than that of a pool. But 10 pool is good against hatch first or 15 hatch. Hatch first and 15 hatch are the same thing, because 10 pool is an early attack that takes advantage of an aggressive expansion. Now 15 pool counters 10 pool because you get more drones and a bigger economy to counter the rush, and you don't have a vulnerable early expansion. This game is a little bit odd. We saw both players go for an aggressive build, a pool first. Now the fact that IdrA opened pool first and didn't move out with any lings just screams to me that he knew Vibe was going to cheese. Vibe in general is considered a macro Zerg and a very strong macro player, and in general a player that favors macro play over cheese play. But IdrA, if you don't know who this guy is, he is the macro machine, the Kraken. This guy is known for his macro, as we see Vibe is going to start researching Ling speed and retreat. But IdrA is the kind of guy who wants to get into a macro game every single game and grind his opponent down with his fundamental mechanics. This means that very often IdrA was the target of frequent cheese and the target of all-in builds, 2 base Protoss pushes that hit before he could get his macro going. But we see here he's going to move out with his lings. Vibe's ling speed is probably a little bit earlier than IdrA's, and that means that IdrA, if he moves out on the map, he can kind of be caught in this weird situation where he's going to be attacked and lose a large portion of his army because he can get surrounded. Sorry about that. The VOD is severely messed up and lagged during that portion, so there shouldn't be any more lag, but we're going to move on to IdrA attacking the natural of Vibe here. He's made some Banes outside the natural of Vibe, but Vibe has Banes of his own and a Spine Crawler, and IdrA is behind in workers at the moment, so this attack really needs to do damage for IdrA. He's going to run up with 6 Banes, but Vibe's here to meet him. Boom! About 5 Banes for 4 Banes there, but IdrA was really expecting to catch Vibe off guard, and suddenly IdrA is way behind. Sure, they're both at 36 supply, but let's be real, guys. Vibe is up 7 workers. He has Spine. He has a Spine and Banes. This means that he's very safe. He's going to go into lair right now. IdrA is aware of the fact that he's behind in workers, so he's going to try to make a lot of workers to try to come back. But we can see right off the back of that attack, IdrA ran into a little bit of a supply block, which means for about 20 seconds when he really needed to be pumping away drones, he wasn't able to. Vibe's lair is about halfway done. Now, Mutalisk play was pretty damn popular in Wings of Liberty ZVZ. That's because the Spore Crawler did not have that silly little bonus damage to biological yet. This meant that once you went mutas and you were ahead, you could close out the game with mutas, just as though it was a Zerg versus Terran or Zerg versus Protoss. Whereas now in ZVZ, the Muta has its uses. It's very good against the Roach, for instance, but the bonus damage on the Spore versus Bio makes it not a very good harassment unit in ZVZ, to be honest. Excuse me, at least as far as pushing advantages go. And we can see as soon as Vibe put down a Spire in his main, IdrA tried to scout, but the fact that Vibe had his army positioned well and made a spine prevented that. So now IdrA is getting a lair pretty much completely after Vibe's lair finished, and he doesn't know Vibe's going Spire. So there's a damn good chance that IdrA could just try to go into standard Roach Infestor or Roach Hydra, be caught horrifically off guard, and just plain and simple lose this game. Because remember, you had to have an Evo chamber to make spores in Wings of Liberty, and IdrA is making an Evo chamber, and he does see that Vibe has taken 2 gas, and that's important because, well, I guess it's not really that important because his vision hasn't been updated recently, but if we look at the production tab, IdrA's trying to go Roach Infestor. This is not going to work out well versus Mutas. He's not going to have units that shoot up. Meanwhile, we see Vibe is making a Roach Warren of his own just in case. He's also making a 3rd. Vibe is very in control of this game, and he's doing well. And even though they're even in workers, IdrA is scouting around with an Overseer. He's about to see the Spire. That's very big. But the Mutas are already coming out. Okay, so he sees the Spire, but the Mutas are already in the production tab. So IdrA throws down Spores. A 3rd base is out of the question because he doesn't have Hydras. Queens didn't have as much anti-air range as they do in Legacy of the Void. So Mutas completely inhibit IdrA from taking his 3rd. So he's going to try to pressure Vibe's 3rd, but Vibe has Banes already, and he's going to micro them very well and not get them picked off. Vibe is playing extremely well, just out of this world. And IdrA is going to be forced to run away against the enemy Mutalisks. Now IdrA does have Spores, and this is a extremely important land tournament, so he's not just going to leave outright. But we can see he's teching 2 Burrowed Infestors, and he's going to try to hide behind his Spores, but he has excellent Spore Crawler placement with 1 Spore right on the lip, looking over the natural, right on that little cliff lip. Great move there by IdrA to have his Spores in position and have creep spread going out there. Really important, because if you get hit in the mouth with Mutas and you don't have the Spores in the right spot, game over. And we can see here, despite the fact IdrA already has creep being spread out to his 3rd, he just now took it, but it's going to be cancelled. And of course he wasn't able to make it a little bit earlier when he wanted to. So IdrA's 3rd severely delayed. Vibes is already halfway done, and IdrA is going to make a lot of Infestors. I think his play for this game is going to be to burrow the Infestors, move them across map, hope to play defense, and then throw a bunch of infested Terran up offensively, harassment-wise, and then maybe Vibe will lose a lot of workers, but he's in a precarious situation. Another thing he might want to go for is chain fungals. And Infestors, if you don't know, back in Wings of Liberty, they did not have a projectile on their fungal. It was just instantaneous. So IdrA's going to move some Burrowed Infestors out. Good for him. Those will be used for harassment. But potentially the other Infestors will be used for a chain fungal, and ideally a chain fungal under Spores. So despite the fact that Vibe got that Spire off and it was unscouted for so long, he's doing very well. But notice Vibe isn't committing to mass Mutas. He's teching into Roach Infestor himself. And he's also double upgrading. So there will be a time in this game where Vibe probably has better upgrades than IdrA too, because he's going to have 2 Evos. And we can see Vibe has an Overseer. Wow, great move there. He's going to fungal the Burrowed Infestors of IdrA, and IdrA is not happy about that. Once again, IdrA ran up that natural ramp of Cloud Kingdom, expecting to catch Vibe off guard, and Vibe was ready for it and snuffed it out. Of course, the earlier play was that Baneling attack. But IdrA was behind a little, and then he committed 2 valuable Infestors to try to harass. Didn't work at all. So that's just another element of him falling behind. He's about 30 supply back now. And Vibe is going to make a huge Roach Infestor army and just steamroll IdrA once his 1-1 finishes, I anticipate. And notice, Vibe made, 6 Mutas? And those Mutas basically made it where IdrA couldn't do anything for a long time. he had to pull all of his overlords back. His third was delayed. He had to commit to infestors. His tech path was severely limited. So Vibe did a great job of making use of just a handful of infestors and didn't make a bunch because obviously if he just made a shitload, IdrA could have just chain fungled them. But a little harassment force like this would be pretty terrible, and IdrA does catch them all in one fungal. Nice. What I was going to say is a harassment force like this is not very good against buff spores, because buff spores just monster mode through those units. But Vibe was just trading off supply. He didn't give a damn about those mutas. That was intentional. Notice that he spread his mutas up to try to make IdrA waste multiple fungals, and now Vibe is going to hit IdrA when he has over double his roaches, and IdrA has two spines, but it's not going to matter. Nice fungal here from IdrA, but he's just going to get swamped by Vibe. A lot of infested Terrans get thrown out too, and IdrA GG. So if you liked it, subscribe.